Hello, hello, West Ham Network. It's Holly, and I'm here today with David Blackmore of Blowing Bubbles magazine. We are going to be chatting about a few different topics in the latest edition of the magazine, including Areola's impact, our season so far, and Bowen's chance to take Antonio's goal scoring record. Let's bring in the man himself, David Blackmore. David, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Yeah, all good, all good. I've just found myself a nice little cozy spot here in Manchester Airport where I've been working this morning. So yeah, it's good. I feel like I'm being really secretive, but yeah, all good. For me,
Secretive chat about West Ham.
international break. So yeah, little corner to talk about West Ham. International breaks over now. All looking forward to the Premier League now. Return of West Ham. Happy days.
This is it. This is it. That's what we want. We want a happy end to the season, don't we? That's all we want. Happy hammers.
Yeah, and do you know what? It's going to be a massive ask as well. I did know obviously throughout the season when you look at those last run of fixtures, but it's not necessarily the Man Cities and Chelseas and all of that and Liverpools and all of those games. It's the games against like Fulham, who obviously hit us 5-0 away from home. I think they're going to be tough. You've got Palace that perhaps under Roy Hodgson you would have thought maybe we get, that will get some points there, but actually now they're looking like a different prospect. Luton, not the same team that we beat earlier this season. So suddenly you're looking at our run in now, and I'm like, how many points are we going to get? How many points do we need to keep ourselves competitive in that push for Europe? Because you look at some of the results we've had recently, and you could argue that Burnley, Villa, Sheffield United, all of those having questionable VAR decisions. How many points is VAR going to cost us this season?
Yeah.
We're there or thereabouts, but I think a lot of the other teams have got slightly easier, more winnable games than we do. But then, look, this is West Ham. It's a tough run in, and we'll probably end up winning all those games and getting into the Champions League or something crazy like that,
That is the thing, isn't it? With West Ham, you just never know that we probably will turn up more against the bigger teams, which could work in our favour, that we've got a few of the bigger sort of top six sides in there as we come to the end of the season. But it's going to be an interesting one, but no team's going to be easy, is it? We know in the Premier League that you've got to turn up on the day to get those points. And like you said, decisions don't always go your way. And those every 3 points or 2 points that we drop because of VAR, it's all going to cost us in some way. So we need a strong end to the season. We need a very strong season end. So what we're going to talk about first is we're going to talk about Areola. So this man has actually kept us in a lot of games recently. He's had a massive impact, and basically he's had a huge impact since we've brought him into the side. So David, talk to us about Areola. Do you think we made the choice at the right time to bring him in instead of Fabianski?
Well, it looks that way, doesn't it? Because I can remember thinking at the start of the season, do you know what? I still think with Fabianski, you know what you're going to get. I think that the previous season or two before that, there were a few mistakes perhaps creeping into Fabianski's games that you could argue perhaps just down to perhaps his age a bit more. And I did think, well, if he's going to make the cuts at Areola, well, better to do it now, I guess, at the start of the season. I mean, how they handled it didn't sound perfect, but I was open to see it, and he has been superb this season. And you talk about the goals from Bowen, you talk about impact from Kudos and Paqueta and stuff like that, but actually the impact that he has had this season, and sometimes it's so difficult to put like a price or a quantify how many points that he's saved in games. He's made sure that a huge chunk of the amount of points that we have so far this season could be down to his input as much as people putting the ball in the back of the net.
Absolutely. And people have been talking about the smash and grab style of how we've been playing, but quite often the saves he's made has kept us in games long enough for us to then go and get that goal or those last 2 goals towards the end of the game. So I don't think we can even put a number of points sort of on how important he's been and the difference he's made. And I was exactly the same, where I thought, we know what we'll get with Fabianski. Like, he's not bad by any means, and I was worried that Areola wouldn't be as good sort of in terms of stopping penalties and things like that, but I knew that he had better sort of dispersing the ball and things like that. He should be better, but I wasn't sure when was quite the right time to actually transition over. But now you look at how he's performing, I wouldn't switch back for anything, and I think he's done incredibly, because it's not easy either to come in and prove yourself as the new first choice, is it?
Well, no, and I think a lot of times when I haven't been able to get to games, when I'm following the commentary, you just see so many times like great save Areola just throughout. And even sometimes when we've been like dominating games, and there'll be that one moment that the opposition come up and looks like they're going to score, and he pulls off an absolute worldy save. Like, it's the one chance they had. It's just moments like that you just can't put a price on. The other thing I thought he's done really well this year, as well as some great saves, is his distribution when he gets the ball. I know Fabianski does as well, but with him, he's really keen to can we get the counter going? Can I get rid of this ball? Can we get Bowen on? And I think that's had a real impact, especially as you say, when we absorbing as much pressure as we did, with having low possession. He's given us the opportunity to counter attack really quickly with what he's been doing, which has been absolutely fantastic. I think you just mentioned penalties, and that game against Blackburn last year, that was fed into a bit of my concerns about bringing him in as number one, because he got nowhere near any of those penalties, and I was just like, that's mad.
He went the wrong way every time, didn't he? And I was like,
with the technology that we've got, I would imagine the vast majority of those players would have gone the same way. In that kind of environment, you just rely on what you know. You're not suddenly going to spend your whole career hitting it right and then go, I'm going to hit it left because it's a big occasion. Of course, you're going to go with what you know. And I guess when we've seen him before in cup games, he has had some good games. A bit in the European competitions, again, he's probably had a few good games. I can't think of many amazing stops. I mean, yes, he probably has done, but this season, I feel like he's just kicked on another level, probably in the same way as you'd think actually someone who's playing week in, week out would, because they're playing more regularly,
Yeah, and one of the things he's done really well as well is just his ability to hold on to the ball. There've been quite a few situations recently where the opponents have shot, and I'm like, he's going to 100% parry the ball out, and they've got a player running in, and he somehow manages to hold on to it when you wouldn't naturally expect someone to be able to do it. There's some powerful shots that he's been doing it with. So things have been very, very good with Areola. And we touched on it slightly there, the ups and downs of the season and the need to have a really strong end to the season. So it's been eventful so far, but it's easy to forget that we actually had quite high hopes and quite a sort of positive beginning to the season. And we're going to have a quick run through quickly. So the positive start to the season was we obviously have very high hopes. We thought we were going to go on to do really incredible things, and we find ourselves in a position now where a few seasons ago we'd have been delighted with. But we drew 1-1 to Bournemouth, first game of the season, which was a little bit anticlimactic because it's one of the games that obviously you always want to win. But then we went on to beat Chelsea and Brighton 3-1. The teams that Chelsea had just spent so much money on their team and should be difficult to beat, and Brighton that are our absolute bogey team. So it seemed like things were looking quite good, didn't it, at the very start? Then we beat Luton 2-3, and then we had a pretty unpredictable patch, but we lost 3-1 to Man City, 3-1 to Liverpool, the games that that are always going to be difficult. So it wasn't a massive shock. We beat Sheffield United. We drew 2-2 with Newcastle, who are performing. But then in October, it turned quite sour. But just touching on the beginning of the season, how were you feeling as the season began? What were your hopes and expectations?
Yeah, I think the run of fixtures that we had didn't sit well with me, in the sense that I thought we were going to have a good start to the season. It's so important to hit the ground running, as we found the year before. Obviously, we didn't have a great start, and then you're constantly playing catch up. But actually, the Bournemouth one was the one where you're thinking, with all these games coming up, we've got Brighton, we've got Chelsea, we needed to get more from that game. But then obviously to go on and do what we did against Chelsea and Brighton, it really set us up well. And I feel like we've built that momentum. Confidence plays such a huge part, especially with the way we set up as well. If you've got confident players, we've been, sometimes recently we have been so clinical, and I think it comes from the confidence. And I feel like other times of the season where we just haven't been clinical enough, and I think it's because we've had a bit of a lack of confidence. Like, there is going to be ebbs and flows for every season. You are going to hit a purple patch, but yeah, we started the season strongly. As you say, some of those games predicted, every fan going into it going, great to get a draw. So getting a defeat, it's disappointing always. You never want to see your team lose. Sometimes it's like some games you can already write off. But we have done quite well this season at getting the points when we need to from those perhaps around and lower than us. Then perhaps you could argue in other seasons we haven't been, because as you say, we always seem to turn up for the bigger teams, but not so much the lower end teams.
Definitely. And then looking to December, that was a little bit better. We drew 1-1 with Palace, but in that month, we beat Spurs 2-1, we beat Wolves 3-0, we beat United 2-0, and we beat Arsenal 3-2. So again, some massive results. But in December, we then had some huge losses. We also lost 5-0 to Fulham. Obviously, what we were saying about those big score lines, which are a massive problem. We lost 5-1 to Liverpool as well in the League Cup quarterfinal, I believe it was. And it kind of sent fans a little bit over the edge, didn't it? Because it was this uninspiring style of play. I think if you're getting the results, you can kind of justify it. But it felt like things started to turn at that point. Did you feel that yourself?
Yeah, I think with those defeats coming so close together, I think the Arsenal game was really key. I think what we saw in the Arsenal game actually gave me a bit more belief that we could then use that as a springboard to sort of kick into January. But definitely, like the Liverpool game in particular was so disappointing because they were under strength. I didn't feel like we played a particularly bad team. I think 4-0 started that game. I just try to remember. So we had players that had a point to prove, and I felt
Yes.
that was the perfect setup for them. And for us to, I think we only had like one shot, and that was Bowen's like great goal. Yeah, that was really tough watching. Fulham was as well. I really didn't feel like we showed up there. That you look under Moyes, I feel like we have had days where you can just tell in the first 5 minutes we're not going to win today. But we haven't had many games where we've been sort of tonked, and that's been one of the big things this season. And when we've lost, we have lost quite heavily, and I'm surprised that. Look, David Moyes didn't want us to lose anyway, but sometimes it's like, under Allardyce as well. If we go away somewhere like Man City and lose 1-0, it's almost like a point in the sense because your goal difference isn't going to have so much of a hammering. Whereas to lose some of those games so heavy, albeit Liverpool won in the cup, doesn't matter. But yeah, that's been something really disappointing. Look at our goal difference now compared to some of the other teams around us. We haven't really been hitting teams for big scores either, Freiburg aside. But yeah, that's been the big thing for me with those games.
Definitely. And also we've had quite a few opportunities, like you're saying, to almost build on that momentum that we get, but then we've sort of slipped up and lost that momentum and lost that confidence. So obviously the start of 2024, we really struggled. We drew to Brighton and Bristol City at home. Then we got knocked out of the FA Cup by Bristol City in a 1-0 loss. We drew 2-2 with Sheffield United, 1-1 with Bournemouth at home. We lost 3-0 to United. We lost 6-0 to Arsenal, which was definitely a painful one. And then we lost 2-0 away to Nottingham Forest. So there was no win in 8 games, and at that point things started turning really sour, didn't they?
Yeah, we actually had an article in the February issue, I think, and the headline was 2020 poor, because it had been so bad up to that point. It just, you're looking at it going, there were so many missed opportunities in all those games. Arsenal game aside, even the United game, I know we lost 3-0, and on paper it looks like it's been a hammering, it was comfortable for them, but I actually thought we played really well that day. We went toe to toe with them. We had much better possession than I thought we would have. We created an awful lot, and that was one of those occasions where I just mentioned earlier about being clinical. We just weren't clinical on the day. I think even we're losing 1-0, Emerson had a glorious chance, missed it. They went directly up the other end and scored. 2-0 down, suddenly a mountain to climb at Old Trafford. But actually, that had gone in. Could we have gone on to do better? And there was a lot of missed opportunities over that. And I think the Nottingham Forest game was one of those that I feel like before the game I wanted to win. During the game, I thought we were comfortably going to get a draw, and then to have lost it in the way we did was a real punch. Thinking, well, we've got enough points pretty much to survive. We're still in Europe. I think the FA Cup was a bit of a blow, especially as we also lost Bowen and Paquetá as well at the same time. So that really had an impact on us. And it was funny, we did that bit to say about 2024 at the start of February, and probably as you're about to go on to, things then changed for us, right?
Yeah, definitely. And just touching on that, I think you hit the nail on the head where you said missed opportunities, and it's been fine margins in a lot of these games that have really cost us, whether it's a defensive mistake, whether it's them coming back on the break and us just being unprepared. But it has been fine margins and tiny mistakes that have sometimes almost like landslide, just it's really made us struggle. So it has been frustrating, because there have been games, like you said, that we could have got points from in there, and then suddenly you find yourself at the end of a 3-0 defeat. So moving on to, well, essentially we're going to talk about what's coming for the rest of the season and how we're turning it around. So we beat Brentford 4-2, 2 goals from Bowen within, I think it was 7 minutes. Brilliant start to the game, and I've never felt so optimistic, I don't think, about the start of a game. I was like, okay, we're like, I don't know where this has come from, but we're back, and Brentford aren't an easy team to beat, are they?
No, and actually, sometimes it's so hard with the fanzine to try and get out your crystal ball and try and work out what your run of fixtures are going to be, particularly around your results are going to be around your fixtures, especially around the games that you have that are sort of within 1 or 2 weeks you're coming out. And for me, I was a bit very much like, we actually went to print, I think, the day after the Brentford game, and so we had to completely change it all around, because it was 2020 poor, and how we have, but now it was like the bees almost stung us into life, because suddenly we just were this completely different side and resurgent. And they've been like Brighton, they've had our number for the last few seasons. So to get off to such a great start, and I think that was replicated in the Freiburg game as well. We had another great start, and we were able to sort of build on that. And I think definitely at London Stadium, it helps if the players come out just let off the handbrake for the first sort of 10, 15 minutes. And
Yeah.
once you do that, the crowd get behind you, the momentum builds, and it just, with both those games, you just felt. Well, having said that, when we were winning, when they scored that goal, pulled that goal back towards the end, it's like, could we really throw away this lead? And which
Yeah.
I actually say, I don't really feel like I've experienced much of that under Moyes. Like, sometimes when we've got in front, you've gone, okay, we'll hold on to this now, and been fairly comfortable. Mainly more like the Dawson days, really, with him at the back. We always felt like comfortable. But
Yeah.
now it seems to be kind of we're only ever one Dinos or Aguerd mistake away from being drawn back into the game again. So. Brentford was a massive shock and actually changed a lot in the magazine that month. But suddenly we had to change things from being quite dour and down to actually a bit more upbeat.
And of course, we've seen the return of Paqueta, who kind of linked everything together there. And we have started looking a lot more like we're playing as a team again. It felt like we had a lot of individuals, and that we just lost the ability to link up play and then take those chances. We beat Everton 3-1. Obviously, we lost 1-0 to Freiburg, and we were all concerned that was sort of the end of Europe and what did this mean. Drew 2-2 with Burnley, and then we came back to absolutely batter Freiburg 5-0, which was a fantastic comeback to keep the European dream alive. And what a comeback it was.
Yeah, and you think that Everton game as well, we weren't brilliant, really. Again, we just come back at the end, sucker punch for them at the end. And I know, speaking to a lot of their fans, they really felt like they probably could have deserved to get a bit more from that. But yeah, they're not a bad side, Freiburg. They really aren't. And I felt that was probably another game where we had plenty of chances and we just weren't clinical enough. Like, we had enough that game. Like, I think there was a volley that Bowen had end of the week. He'd put that in the net. Paquetá had a header. But you're right, you're saying about him come back in the team. Like, when he came back in, he did look a bit dead on his legs after 60 minutes. The impact that it has. I put it akin. So you can remember when Andy Carroll used to be injured and he would come back for a game and everyone would be so excited because Andy Carroll was back. It's kind of that level. And you think that's mad that we've gone from, tall, lumbering English striker to Brazilian Magnifico, But I went to the England-Brazil game and I thought Lucas was it was total housery that he was doing because he was just these classic. I would have put money on him getting booked. And it's funny, I put money on getting booked in the other friendly as well, which he did. He just, those little, and I love it from him. He's a real street fighter. I like those little niggly things, not enough to kind of cause a reaction from them or, going to get him sent off, but just stopping the play, technical foul, stopping the play. He did that a lot against England, particularly on sort of Bellingham in the middle of the park. But I thought he was fantastic for that. And on such a big stage as well, which is great from a West Ham perspective. Great, feeling of pride of having a player of playing, the top end of international football, but equally not so good because you've probably got looking at like the likes of Man City looking at going, we could probably have a bit of that in our midfield.
Yeah, absolutely. And then looking to the end of the season, we've got players like Paqueta and Bowen, and we've got Antonio back. And there's a lot that we can do now with our attack, despite maybe having a bit of a shaky defence. So we've got some big fixtures coming up. We've got Newcastle, Spurs, Wolves, Fulham, Palace, Liverpool, Chelsea, Luton, and Man City, and every point that we can pick up there is going to be pivotal in us securing European football through a Premier League spot. What are your hopes and expectations? How many points do you reckon we can get sort of as we head towards the end of the season?
I haven't sat down and done the maths, but in my head, I was thinking with all our games that we've got left of the season, I think if we were aiming for like a point per game or 1.5 points per game, I think that might give us. We're not going to win every one of those games, and I think, as a lot of people say, you've got to take each game at a time. The Premier League games, there's no easy games. You just have to go take each one on their merits. Some days we might turn up and the Moyes system is just going to work really well. We're going to come away with a point or three in different fixtures, but I think we just need to keep ticking over. We just need to keep picking up points now, because there are going to be other teams that are going to hit form. I think it has a huge impact on how we finish in the Premier League season. Depends on how we do in the Europa League against Leverkusen. We get through that, or we have a good first leg. The game on Sunday afterwards becomes a bit sort of null and void from our perspective. But actually, in the context of us wanting to get into the Europa spots of the league, we're going to need to be on our top form in every single game, which you always have to do. But that Burnley draw that we had, it was in between the two games. You kind of, you just kind of go, around that. But the Leverkusen game, we definitely need to be on it, and the Premier League games around it, we need to be really good as well, because otherwise we're just going to lose ground on the teams around us, and we're right in the mix at the moment. So we just need to keep plugging away and getting points.
Yeah, it is close, and we can't risk dropping any points, can we, at the moment? But I'm feeling quite positive that I think we can find actually some momentum now, and that we're coming off the back of some improved performances. Things are starting to look a lot more positive, and hopefully we can just pick up those points as we come towards the end of the season. Hopefully look back on this as a bit of a learning curve and a wobbly season, but we got there, and keep European football be the main thing, because that's going to have such an impact for the seasons to come, the calibre of players we can keep and attract, and just all sorts going on at West Ham. We do not want to be dropping out of European football, do we?
No, and if we don't get European football next year, I think you look at our front three and you go, do any of them really want to be playing for a team that's going to be mid-table and not in European football next year? And look, that's not saying that any of them are unhappy at the club. They all seem to be very happy at the club. But you look at all three of those, they're all internationals. They're all on the top of the game and their powers. I don't know. On the flip side, as a fan, if we get European football for like the fourth season in a row, I mean, what more can you ask for in terms of, as a supporter, more nights under the lights, and I think we've done fairly okay with those Sunday fixtures. There haven't been too many times that I've been blaming it. Sometimes we've been disappointing on the Sunday, but sometimes that's the team we're coming up against. Something like, well, they played on Thursday, so we're going to really go at them, I feel like. But yeah, I think this season it's been much better than the season before. Obviously, when we were fighting relegation for so long, right to the very end. This season, we could have done better in the cup competitions, but we're still in Europe. Great chance in the league. And my expectations are that we're probably not going to qualify for Europe via the league. But I've written off Moyes and the team on so many occasions now, and they keep surprising me. So I'm ready to be pleasantly surprised, but I don't want to build myself up, because it's like with Sport West Ham, you get your heart broken too many times.
Exactly, protecting the heart a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm doing.
And talking about Moyes there, one of the articles in Blown Bubbles magazine spoke about whether we should hold off to decide Moyes' future. And I'm really keen to get your thoughts on this. So there's an argument to wait, and there's also an argument to sack him now. If we wait, we'll be able to properly assess the season. We'll be able to see what we've achieved. And we'd also have time to get another really good option behind the scenes, sort of ready to go for when the time comes. The argument to sack him now, obviously many people feel that we've got to make the change now to secure European football. But when you take a step back, and I'm trying to take my emotions out of everything as well, we're currently in European spots, and a shaky start with a new manager could actually jeopardize this. So how do you feel about, in terms of how long we should wait, and whether it's worth waiting to actually make the decision on Moyes?
My thoughts are that it doesn't really matter what any of us fans think, because at the end of the day, it comes down to one man, David Sullivan. At this current situation, he's not going to want to pay off David Moyes. He's not going to want to pay him off for the end of his contract. We're 2 months away. He's going to let him play it out. We're going to get to the end of the season, and then he's going to make a decision on that. On the flip side to it, like I do think there is that argument about bringing someone. If you think you are going to get rid of him, if you think you aren't going to offer him an extension, then yeah, there is an argument of trying to bring someone in now, maybe even to an extent of saying to Moyes, look, you're not going to stay on beyond the end of the season. We've got a new manager. I mean, it seems like it would never happen, but get someone in, get working with the players now.
Yes.
Huge advantages of doing that. I just really can't see that that's going to happen now. And you're right. The issue you have, we bring someone in over the summer. They won't have had as much time with the players pre-season. They need to get the backing to bring in some of the players that they want to do, and then it would come down to that August, September. If they're playing expansive football, are we getting the results? Because I tell you, we could bring in a new manager. He could be playing expansive football. We could be bottom of the table in September, and suddenly everyone's going, see, should have just kept on to Moyes. And I think David Sullivan will be very, very aware of that. But this whole Moyes in and out stuff has been rumbling on for so long now, and really I keep going on either side of the fence. I really don't know where I stand, but I think at the moment where we are, I think he deserves to see out this season, and to see what we achieve. I think my opinions might change if we get hammered by Leverkusen home and away. I think then I probably will change my views and probably be a bit more towards Moyes out, because we don't have much in the way to play for. But at the moment, we're not going to get relegated. David Sullivan does not need to be pressured into triggering any knee-jerk decisions, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the more time we take, the main thing I think is that should we know that we are definitely not going to continue with Moyes after this season, I really want us to have an option ready to go as soon as possible, so they get the maximum time with the players, the maximum input on in terms of who we sign over the summer, so that we are ready to hit the ground running for next season if it's under a new manager, because we don't want to be bringing someone in at the last minute who then needs to find their feet during the Premier League season, because that would definitely be a bit of a shocker. And we've spoken about obviously the defensive struggles that we've got, the fact that Areola has been doing really well to keep us in games, and the fact that also we do have a good, exciting attack now that are capable of scoring a lot of goals and being really creative. I just want to talk about Bowen. So, how long do you think it will be before he takes Antonio's goal scoring crown? I know this was an article that you had in your magazine, and Bowen's been performing incredibly for us. So there are question marks over how long Antonio is going to stay at the top of his game and at West Ham. And Bowen has essentially committed his future to us. And I'd like to think with Danny Dyer as a father-in-law that he might stick to that. So do you think he could take over that goal-scoring record in a matter of time?
Yeah, it won't be long either. The rate he's going at the moment, he's on such great form at the moment. And I really do think that he's going to be continuing to score goals the rest of the season. I can't remember the math exactly, but I think it'll be a couple of seasons tops before he gets there. Like, he's scoring so many goals. He's almost like that 20-goal season striker that we've wanted for so long.
Yeah.
Great to see him back out on the wing when he's been out there as well, because I feel like as much as he has adapted and changed his game up top, that he hasn't had as much impact when he's been up top himself. Antonio, you say, how long before he's no longer at top of his game? I don't think he's I don't think he's at top of his game anymore. I really do think, like, the last season, I think that few years ago, 2019 and stuff, that was like peak Antonio, strong, running the channels, causing mayhem. I just don't think we have that player anymore, but he'll probably still chip away a few more goals before he goes. But yeah, I think Bowen's going to get to that crown really soon, and then I think he's going to then kick on and score even more and set a real good benchmark for any other future West Ham striker.
Absolutely. So just looking at stats, Antonio's got 78 goals and 45 assists, and Bowen's got 58 goals and 38 assists. So in terms of assists, he's almost where Antonio already is. And in terms of goals, 20 behind, but he's got a long time left at West Ham, we'd like to think. So it definitely feels
also, that's not Premier League goals, is it?
No, that's all goals.
Yeah, so, and I think in the Premier League they're even closer than that, and I think it really isn't going to take long. Flat out. I think is Bowen also our highest ever European scorer as well? I think he went past that. So, it's great. And actually, name dropping here, I actually did bump into Danny Dyer fairly recently, and had a great chat with him about Jared, and he can't speak highly enough of him and how much he loves the club. And and you're right, I think definitely having Danny Dyer as your father-in-law, imagine having that conversation where you're like, yeah, Liverpool have come in for me and I'm seriously considering it. He's going to be like, no, you're not, mate.
You're not. Yeah. Where's that contract?
Yeah, exactly.
Always keep him at the club. Done us a favour there, Danny Dyer. I reckon he knew what he was doing.
I think so. 100%.
Just get them in the family. It's nothing they can do to escape then.
But if only we'd had similar situation with Declan Rice as well, we'd have kept hold of him as well.
Exactly. Should have brought him in. Someone needed to get him in the family. But yeah, so it's feeling like I'm hoping we're going to have a really positive end to the season. And I know you were saying you're not overly confident that we'll qualify for Europe through the Premier League, but hopefully we're pleasantly surprised and that we can just pick up some points in the games that are to come and have a great end to the season and then a strong transfer window. What are your hopes in terms of transfers where we need to strengthen most?
Depends on who the manager's going to be. I think if it's still David Moyes, I think we need to look at we definitely, we always say a striker, and we do, but if there isn't one that's going to suit Moyes' system, then we'll probably have to continue next season with what we've got in terms of Antonio Bowen situation. We definitely need to look at that back line, especially at centre back. I really thought this was going to be the season that Zuma and Aguerd were going to really come into their own, and Zuma just doesn't seem to have the needs anymore. Like, he seems very much like Ledley King in a sense of he must only be like training once or twice a week, and he's playing one game a week. Aguerd, something's gone on there behind the scenes, falling out with Moyes. Something has happened. Not the player I thought he'd become. Dinos, as much as I like him, I just still think he's so error prone. And Bonner's fallen in the trap of really not playing enough games. I feel like he's one of those players that needs to play week in, week out to really, build up his confidence and become the better defender that we know he's. But again, he's getting old. I think Emerson has been an absolute joy to watch. I think Sufal has been fantastic this season. And Ben Johnson, when he's come in, obviously been playing a bit further forward, has been great. I don't know if Ben Johnson's our right back for the future. Cresswell, Freiburg did really well, scored a great goal. But other times this season, I've looked at him and I'm like, he's past it as well. So I think Emerson has got that left back berth down for me for now. And I can't remember how old he is, but he's still got a few years left. So I think that's good. But yeah, Moyes needs to look at that centre back partnership and who do we need to bring in to try and shore that up, because we have lost that kind of Moyes defensiveness in a team that's predominantly playing this low block counter attacking. We've kind of really helped out the forward thinkers, but not really done much with the defence. I think that's going to be big. But if we change manager, then blimey, like where do you start in terms of the team? We just need to change so much in terms of just having players that are forward line. We're fine in terms of expansive and ball carrying players and stuff, but yeah, the other players around there, your likes of Souček, Ward-Prowse, very sideways, backward passing. I'd love to see both of them just getting the ball and taking out their feet and looking forward.
Yeah.
New manager is going to prompt a bit more of a clear out than I think if Moyes stays on as manager.
Yeah, Ward-Prowse is one that I'm baffled with, because we know he's got the ability to literally get the ball exactly where he needs it to be, but it does feel as though in open play he doesn't have that same urge to sort of aim for goal that I'd like to think that he could actually do really well and do some really good sort of switches, but we're not seeing it at the moment, and it's looking quite negative. And what you were saying there as well about the almost like a big shake-up being needed in defence, it's one of the positions that previously I'd been more confident that we were okay, and then obviously we've brought in players like Dinos and I thought good, like we've got cover, but it's been a bit of a shock this season that we massively need to invest, especially in the centre-back area, just because it isn't working, whether it's a lack of communication, whether it's individual errors, whatever it is that's happening. It does feel as though we need to replace people at the back. You've got Zuma's knees, you've got Ogbonna, who obviously hasn't played, but he's also at the end, like nearing the end of his career. And then Mavropanos just doesn't seem to be at the level that I'd really hoped that he would be. And again, Aged made a few mistakes here and there when he first started, but I'd hope that he'd be a defender that would really help us to attack the opposition. And whatever's gone on behind the scenes, obviously he has made a few mistakes, but it does feel that he's just fallen out of favour, and yeah, he's disappeared.
Yeah, and you just look at how many goals you've conceded. You go back to those kind of Dawson Ogbonna days, and how just strong we looked at the back, and now it's not as bad as it has been over the years, where you just feel like we're just going to get hammered every week, but we're always going to concede. And I think that's been a real learning curve for the team this week, that this season, that we are going to concede a goal. So we need to score at least 2 to win a game. Whereas previously we'd win 1-0 and we feel comfortable winning 1-0. So yeah, definitely big changes. And I'm surprised that we've probably been in for players and we've not got them for one reason or another. But yeah, that definitely does need a major look this summer.
Absolutely. But bring back Craigie D.
Yeah. I always wondered as well, because he actually qualified for a Conference League medal. And I can't ever see that if he was given it, if they did a presentation of it. I thought, maybe because we played Wolves, I'm just trying to work out whether he would have been sort of given it on the pitch or whatever. But I would love to see him get that Conference League medal, because he did so much great things for us in Europe that he definitely deserves it.
Definitely. I've got very fond memories of his time at the club, and I think a lot of Craig Dawson. So before we round up, let all the readers and viewers know how they can keep up to date with Blowing Bubbles.
Yeah, so it's a monthly publication, blowing-bubbles.co.uk, where you buy that one issue, or you can subscribe to 5, 10, or actually our most popular subscription is actually the 20 issue one, because I think a lot of people just like to do it. They know they've done it, especially if it's a present for somebody. Then they know that it's going to be 20 issues, and they're not going to have me then emailing them saying, do you want to renew the subscription? So it's really grown and evolved so much over the years to where it is now. And I'm so pleased with all the writers we've got. We cover, you know what it's like. Every month, Sporting West Ham, it's a roller coaster. There are good things to talk about. There are negatives to talk about. Like, we've just looking back a couple of issues, we had the Arsenal defeat. Worst game some of our writers have ever seen in their time supporting West Ham, talking about some of those ones. But then I've got the same writers that then write about their best times watching West Ham on the back of the Freiburg game. And it's interesting how they were much happier right in the latter, this latter version than the first one, reminiscing about some of the poor performances. But yeah, every month is definitely an adventure, and never short of ideas of content that we want, because West Ham is so much going on. But yeah, blowing-bubbles.co.uk.
It's really good, well-rounded publication as well, I find. And yeah, so many really interesting writers and people that on social media that I follow. So it's really fun to see everyone's different viewpoints. Like you said, the highs and lows of being a West Ham fan are very, very much shown.
Yeah, exactly. It's been 12 years now, and there's every month I look back on it and I'm just like, gosh, did this really happen? And always happens at West Ham.
It always happens. And on that note, we shall leave it there. But until next time, we'll be catching up again soon, I'm sure, for another video where we can chat through loads of the latest stories. And yeah, until next time, come on, you Irons.
Thanks, Ollie.
Thanks, David. Speak soon.
Bye.